Hello. This is another recording of Write Once, Read Many. This time we'll be covering chapter 19.6. And I just need to take a moment to get the stream link out there. It's Greg. All right. Got things more or less set up. Yes. Greg has to worry about work, which makes sense. So he won't be able to be here much. But it looks like he's able to hear us this time, so by us I mean just me. The audience participation reminder, in these chapters we see a lot of combo attacks, including one of the most infamous skitter combos, as pictured here in the artwork. What is a combo you want to see happen? Alright. And man, got kind of a long artwork here, but as we see, it's quite detailed and there's a lot going on. For themes, I didn't really come up with much. I couldn't figure out exactly what I wanted to say, and I did think about it a couple times. I just, there's a lot going on in these chapters, but people are being pulled in a lot of different directions. I guess desperation. All the sides are really desperate, and they're all doing things that are kind of reckless. Almost regardless of who we're talking about. Anyway, though, I think we can move on from the themes to the main chapter in just a moment. I do want to admire the artwork as it's coming in. There's like all these thorns and like bone ridges and like tentacle pods and eyes and little fingies and claws. It's great. And you can sort of see it's starting to take shape where it got cut in half. So, at the start of the chapter, I wanted to get out of the way. The clone of Eidolon is named Ignis Fatus. So, that's from the chapter tags, and I am going to call him Ignis almost the entire time because it's faster to just say Ignis, and Eidolon clone sounds dumb a million times. It sounds fine a couple times. So I'm not going to be appending clone to a name a billion times. So Ignis uses his power that he healed himself with at the end of the previous chapter, where he sort of flickers through realities. That reminds Skitter of Scapegoat. He uses that power to generate clothes for himself and Apocrypha, which is Alexandria's clone. And because of symbolism, all of the clothes are reverse colored. They're like a white outfit for Alexandria and a like black robe with red emanating out of it for Eidolon, who's normally sort of gray with green-blue emanating out of it. So they're both the evil versions, and it's Apocrypha is the clone of Alexandria. So Skitter thinks about him making the clothes like it's a weird thing, even though he literally wears high-quality armor, which comes into play during the battle. So it totally makes perfect sense. I think it was maybe just a fun way to introduce it. Like, can you believe he's thinking about clothes at a time like this? But yes, I can't believe. So, Legend shoots Ignis with a laser to the chest until Apocrypha moves between them. And when he curves the laser around her, she goes after him for real. We see the healing speed must be quite fast, because it's enough that Ignis survives and is back to full strength like very quickly after he stops getting shot with the laser. Echidna charges at the heroes now that she's sort of got more minions out. And she's big enough now to trample cars like they're nothing. Chevalier steps out and to intercept her. As she gets closer, the sword that he's got is growing the whole time. Because as we recall, oh, it's 2 + 4 × 5. Driving to work. That's how it be. So Chevalier's power is that he can combine multiple objects together into, like, the properties of them into one object. So he has a very lightweight, easy to carry sword that he feels when others see this very gigantic sword, which has the properties and density of a third sword. So there's kind of like 3 components. The lightweight, easy to wield thing that Chevalier feels, the size and like visuals of sort of what he's going for, and then a third like ultra dense sword that like he hits with. And his armor is similar, where his armor is made up of multiple components such that it's very lightweight from his standpoint, but it's incredibly dense. And then 2 + 4 × 5, despite driving, said, "Wait, what did you just say? Chevalier?" And, you know, we get to see those glorious capital D's, the backwards ones that 2 + 4 × 5 uses. Anyway, so, you know, he lets his now very embiggened sword fall down into the ground, and it just sort of like the blade just sticks into the pavement because it's like blade down, and then because it's a gun sword, because of course it is, it's Final Fantasy VIII time, he waits till just the right moment and fires the cannonball, and she leaps out of the way, but it's so fast and so large that it hits her and it splorches like 3 of her legs. She's got 8 primary legs on the bottom, according to Taylor, in this portion of the fight. And so it blams off 3 of these legs, and then he waits as she sort of like keeps tumbling toward him, and aims the next shot and takes off 3 of the legs on the other side. So there's just 2 primary claws at the front, kind of. And it sort of stops her motion and spins her around in place. And then this Cape, who's with Chevalier, Rhyme, starts throwing all these ice crystals that expand on impact with Noelle and become like massive glacier chunks of ice. Trying to like keep Noelle in place and possibly even stop the healing by like just physically like filling the space that the meat is trying to come out of. This is when Chevalier hits us with some of that Ship of Theseus energy and cuts off the human looking bit of Noelle at the top. And then when the human body is disconnected for a bit, because he sort of like he cuts it off on top of his sword and slap shots it away. It's very sad for Noelle. And then she's like writhing around and she's still alive, even though Skitter estimates that even just like the force of being thrown and hitting the ground would have killed a real human. You know, it then dissolves, like, you know. Again, Marvel stole everything from Worm. The people Thanos dissolving is clearly stolen from this. Nothing else. Anyway, where are we? So, with all that, a tongue shoots out of the body to grab Chevalier. He cuts it off as it grabs him, and then starts trying to circle around Noelle. But one of those Melty Hands clones from before, that, for instance, Weld was fighting in a previous chapter, is pulling apart cars and throwing bits at Chevalier. This does distract him, but luckily doesn't do that much. And then some unknown stone-throwing clone, who's clearly like one of the out-of-town heroes, is breaking off the ice from Noelle, the big ice chunks, by throwing little stones that apparently impact much, much harder. Chevalier has to block one of the stones by like shooting it out of the air. But then Rhyme gets a bunch of more clones encased in ice. You know, there's some back and forths. Skitter gets sick nasty with it. It's pretty gross. She decides to use her bugs to tear apart the eyes and any exposed flesh of any clones that are partway outside the ice. And then when Ignis sort of makes his presence known in the fight at this point, starting a vacuum/wind control power. Miss Militia starts shooting him again, but it doesn't matter as much because of his armor, and he starts deflecting the bullets with the wind until they're not even hitting him anymore. And so the vacuum must have some serious force, obviously, given that it's able to redirect bullets to a certain extent. And he starts taking all the air out of the area within like 100 feet around him, which has got to be one of those Taylor estimates. 100 feet's a pretty long way. Seemed like he would already be in range of even more people than it's described as if it was really 100-foot radius. But maybe it's like 100 square feet. I don't know. That would make actually way more sense to me if it's 100 square feet. But anyway, he doesn't even care about the other clones. He's vacuuming all the air. You know, he's sort of scooting closer to the heroes. He's like, I'm going to get you. I'm going to move my vacuum cleaner over that pile of injured heroes and clones. And Skitter has Rachel start evacuating fallen capes. Yeah, 2 + 4 × 5 says, or even 100-foot diameter instead of radius. Yeah, diameter would make more sense too, but it just seems like on a battlefield, like I'm thinking if somebody was that strong, they'd be like across the street, you know, a little down the way, and they'd still be getting me with their vacuum. So, just feels like it doesn't quite fit the narrative of what's going on. By the way, we got to stop for a moment. Now that the art is fully colored in and we see all the after effects and things that were applied to the ending image, it is wow. It's something to behold. It's one of those I guess, like, you know, my art's just never gonna be at this level where Vic's art is at. You get a fun, kooky little paint art from me, and then this is like really amazing. So I'm glad that we have like a proper artist involved. Anyway. Boop, boop, boop. So, you know, Rachel stops fighting clones at Skitter's behest. And, you know, is hesitant to do so at first. But then Skitter redirects Rhyme to take over that clone zone on the battlefield. And she was also hesitant, but goes for it. And then, you know, Skitter starts informing people over the battlefield different stuff. With a lot of the capes moved out of the way, Ignis decides to focus on chipping all the ice off Noel, so he goes back to where he started, kind of. And the ice is worn away, and they can see that the healing portions of Noel's legs are all fleshed over, and there's kind of like bone spikes stabbing out and stuff growing out to fill in all the lost parts. Noelle's human upper body has regrown, but she's still kind of a fleshy mess. Um, uh, I feel like we've all seen sci-fi movies who have, some weird, like, guy falling out of a pod, where they're, like, covered in residual stuff. A Doctor Who episode, maybe. I don't have any top of mind examples, which I probably should have thought of in the doc, but we've seen a regrown Noel. Chevalier tries to shoot Ignis, but the shot is deflected, although comically kind of into Noel. And apparently it also broke off ice from her, but it seems like kind of a net neutral. But then Ignis starts shooting wind at Chevalier and sends him like flying into the distance, like completely outside of Skitter's radius. And Legend is sort of fighting Apocrypha, building up speed because his accelerated speed is faster than her, which is a consistent fast speed. And then he'll slow down to like turn and shoot her on the turns. And then whenever he gets a good shot on her, it slows her down for a moment, which allows him to shoot a wave of lasers at different clones. And while there's the easy-to-kill clones that Skitter is just massacring without even thinking about it, really, Legend is killing off the Melty Hands guys or, like, multipliers, taking them out in a way that Skitter has a bit more trouble with. But Mirrodin bites off a bit more than he can chew and disappears Ignis from reality the same way that we've seen him do to various people, including Noel last chapter, which releases all the air that Ignis had been vacuuming around the battlefield. It sort of sends Noel and Mirrodin tumbling. Mirrodin's also running out of juice, so he sets down on the ground and is not able to hold Ignis for long, and he reappears very quickly. And Mirrodin starts shooting energy blasts and explosions and the whole 9 yards at Ignis. Then he starts up doing the windy thing again. Since Chevalier is down for now, or at least out, maybe not down. It's like a fighting game where he got ring outed. He might be able to walk back someday, but anyway, they've set up a bunch of Tinker force fields, and Rhyme is putting down more ice to try and pin down Noel while they figure out what they're doing. Skitter sees Weld saving Kidwin and Scapegoat. She's sort of trying to assess her tools. And she sees some beefy dude dragging Tecton away, who's assumedly still stuck in his power armor. Otherwise, he'd just be walking away. Rachel has a dog that accidentally broke a hero's rib, so we're getting, different flavor text of things happening in the battle. But they did get him to safety from getting suffocated to death. So that's a net positive. Ignis airbends Mirrodin back against a wall and is able to get him into the vacuum range, and he starts trying to get away like Mirrodin's escape-only plan now. But Ignis knocks the staff out of his hand, and, I bet Mirrodin's one of those capes who has a much harder time using his power when he doesn't have his implement. Because it puts him in the right mind state or whatever. But the air is being pulled straight from his lungs, so it's worse than just being normal suffocated to death. He is actively being air pulled, which is not something that is normally possible. But he's feeling quite weak. Ignis gets knocked around a bit by Regent, who, has a, as we've said many times, unblockable ranged attack. Pretty good. He manages to keep Mirrodin... Ignis manages to keep Mirrodin pinned with another additional Air Blast set. And then we got Ignis distracted by the imminent death of Mirrodin, because he's just like, I gotta kill this guy. I love to kill. He doesn't say any of that, but it's body language. Miss Militia takes a few shots at him now that he's not actively deflecting, and he keeps healing himself and repairing his armor and crap. And then when the heroes have to stop shooting because they're worried that he's going to redirect the shots into Mirrodin now that he's focused on incoming fire again, then Skitter gets some bugs to Ignis and puts a spider silk cord around his neck, but she doesn't have anything good to attach it to this time. What's she gonna do? So she puts it around a car mirror. Using the flickering power, he's able to move past the cord. So it's sort of a failed attempt, but she just keeps carrying it around and trying to reconnect it, because, given how little of her focus it takes, why wouldn't she do that, So, just keep harassing him. Wanton tries to join the fray, and even though there's a big wind directed at him, it's not pushing him back much. He's more sentient storm than the wind is, I guess. And then Ignis takes out a big Chris knife, like he's Jafar, as, the disguised version of Jafar at the Cave of Wonders. You know what I mean. 2 + 4 × 5 shift is starting. Bye for now. So he's got his scary knife, and then Regent makes him drop the knife. But one flicker power later, and he's got the knife in his hand. He grabs Mirrodin's mask, pulls his face upward, and then just stabs him through the chin. And it's just before Wanton gets in there. Although when Wanton gets there, I think it's pretty cool that he knocks the knife into the air and then starts actively knifing the shit out of Mirrodin, or not Mirrodin, of Ignis. It's not something that I would have guessed. I kind of thought he was a swirl / vortex, and that was the main thing, and he could control where the center was. But it's clearly a lot more nuanced than that. Anyway, so Capes are still scrambling around trying to organize. We've got some cool ones that are described but aren't really important for this part. Gully's carrying Clock Blocker and a hero we don't know, Ramus. It seems like Clock Blocker's wounds are really bad after the Shatterbird attack, but we know in a couple minutes Scapegoat's going to heal him, so we don't have to worry about our boy, Dennis. Unable to run around, but still conscious, and able to use his power. Clock Blocker's surprised to see Skitter there. Ignis starts going off on the crowd, sort of interrupting the Clock Blocker Skitter dialogue from starting. And I kind of took a huge chunk of what he says here, because, that would be a little belabored to reword everything he's saying. The bit that I did reword is I'll torture your friends until you fight me. The parts that were a bit more Brad Neely-ish. And then he's like, oh, actually, I've never had the opportunity to spill the tea before. This seems pretty interesting. He becomes Steve Smith and starts telling a story from Professor Browse. We founded Cauldron, the Triumvirate, the Number Man, William Manton, the Doctor. We sold people powers. Anyway, I'll start taking this a bit more seriously, and just be a vaguely menacing voice instead. It meant more people with powers to fight the Endbringers. That was the lie we told ourselves, but we created the Siberian and Shatterbird in a roundabout way. We created the Grey Boy, selling him powers, finding ourselves unable to stop him when he went out of bounds. There were countless others. Echidna is just the latest in a long series of grave mistakes. And then a little bit of flavor. I could see Noelle. Her arms had separated from her separated from her torso, but she left them limp at her sides, her long hair in her face as she stared up at him. Oh yeah, he's sort of hovering in front of the crowd because he's evil and he loves to hover. We made the PRT, pretended to let ourselves be run by the unpowered, but we put Alexandria in charge. We manipulated media, manipulated nations. In the interest of power, we ventured into alternate worlds to kidnap people, experimented on them to refine our formulas. And the failed tests, the people who turned out wrong, we cast them out. Tossed them out as a bonus to anyone willing to pay a little more for an enemy that was guaranteed to lose against them. That's all you were, monsters. Little more than the cheap towels that are on offer for a few extra dollars when you buy something on a shopping channel. So, he's very melodramatic. It's a whole thing. I even have one more bit of it after some of what I say. So Legend tries to get in some pithy retort, but he can't between the wind noises and the twin apocryphas. By the way, Ignis is using the wind to carry his voice to all the people, on top of all the other crap he's doing with the wind. Noelle had barfed out some more clones. That's why there's now 2 apocryphas that are chasing Legend when he's trying to retort. But generally, the clones had stopped fighting to let the heroes listen to and digest the Ignis. I have to imagine that somewhere there's a hero just hacking away at clones elsewhere on the battlefield, though. Oh, and Skitter thinks to herself that if anyone tried to stop Ignis from talking, they would seem like they were a Cauldron sympathizer. It is problematic because regardless of anything else, he could be changing powers on the fly and only keeping his aerokinesis and just be like, doo-doo, just talking while I build up stronger powers. Even if it weren't such a strong psychological ploy to begin with, it's also good on that level. So Skitter tells Gully that he's lying to make things sound worse than they are, and Clockblocker says that there's got to be a kernel of truth, but he whispers it, so Skitter thinks maybe only she heard it, because bug. And then back to some Ignis text. It's all been a ploy from the start. This is when they mention his aerokinesis carrying his words. Every single one of you were deceived. For every one of you that bought your powers, there were innocents who died or became monsters for the sake of that formula's research. No matter what good you might do, it will never make up for that. And the rest of you, conned, brought in with the promises of ideals and saving the world. You're fools. Clearly, they were fools to have trusted Eidolon. And this is when Clockblocker says that they've lost, and there's a back and forth between him and Skitter here. But even if they win the fight now, they'll lose the long, slow war with the Endbringers without the Protectorate. Skitter says they'll find a way forward, and Clockblocker starts laughing, which is painful, because he's almost dying from his glass wounds. And then when he calls her an optimist, she thinks about it. Skitter thinks the villains have an advantage in this situation because they already didn't believe in the system and suspected people of being corrupt. So this isn't a very far cry. It's still worse than she thought. But She can deal. She's basically like a more action-oriented Daria right now. She's just like, I already knew that the world was terrible, so it's not much of a surprise. That kind of a thing. So Skitter watches the battlefield, sees Noelle watching the battlefield as well, and is like, oh, it's Noelle specifically. I can tell from her body language that she's not echidna right now. She is le girl, not le monster. So Skitter, sets up one of her classic weird gambits where she makes Clockblocker thinks his job is to shoot her in the back of the head by being really vague and weird. But really, she set up a network of spider silk cords that are all attached to the gun, and she's going to have him use his power at just the right moment to clock block all the cords. Probably at the time when he feels most like he needs more time. Almost like his power would get stronger when he feels, like there's not enough time left. He's not even going to know what's going on exactly. And after handing Clockblocker this gun and giving these dicey instructions, she calls out to Noelle that she's willing to take the deal from the beginning of the arc. She wants to trade herself for a hostage. She wants Eidolon back. Skitter baits Noelle into saying that... Skitter is baiting Noelle by saying that this will be the only chance that Noelle will get to kill Skitter herself. And she makes a specific point of saying that they need Eidolon, even if they don't want him, within earshot of all the heroes, and using her bugs to get the message to everybody. Because that's how she talk. She bug talk. And then, Skitter's agreeing in her mind with the line of thinking from Clockblocker that if the Protectorate isn't there, even if they just don't have the Triumvirate to fight the Endbringers, then they're going to lose too much ground. So Noelle relents and agrees to let Eidolon go, and once she spits him out, he's actually able to recover much faster than any of the other captured capes had, including Skitter, who's got, special brain powers, because she's a high-level thinker. And then when he tries to rejoin the heroes, just zoop up to them, then there's a Mean Girls moment where two of the heroes fly into his way. Then he knows that his secrets are all out there now. Damn you, Ignis, for spilling the beans. So Eidolon and Ignis sort of settle down. They both don't fight and are ready to mirror move each other. You know how clones fight. And with them, it's not even perfectly symmetrical violence, but it's similar. And, there's a back and forth where Noelle's yelling at Skitter, who tries to yell back at her that she killed Coil in her quietest indoor voice. She's like, I killed Coil because I had a good reason, and he was too dangerous and a monster. I don't know if she actually says monster. Let me see where Coil. Where's that part of the chat? You killed Coil and we needed his help. I killed Coil because he was a monster. Maybe not the greatest thing to say to Noelle right now. Those damn monsters. I hate monsters. Especially ones named Noelle. Let's see here. So Skitter keeps Rachel from trying to intervene with her dogs. She fully taunts Noelle into just running right for her. Noelle at first is saying I might just spit clones at you and then they'll beat you to death. What are you gonna do? And then Skitter's like, I don't know. I think the heroes will just save me. They're not gonna let a girl get beaten to death after all. They're still heroes. And then Noelle, she's like, you're just going to have to kill me yourself in person. 1v1 me, bro. And Skitter stays perfectly still as Noelle attempts to 1v1 her, bro. And then just at the right moment, use your power! Sort of sounds like she's Skitter is Sora right now. Courage! And then we get the iconic moment shown here in the art where Noelle hits a time-frozen thread at full charge and is giant and has tons of weight and speed and all that. And the gigantic form is torn in half, and it's even mentioned that, like, as the moment of contact is felt, then Noelle, as soon as she can, starts, like, trying to use her front legs and everything to brace her. But the problem is that this just gives more force in that front section, which tears her in half using the strength of both of her sides. It's crazy stuff. This is what happens when a very powerful force hits an immovable object. And then, let's see here. This is when Skitter yells to Miss Militia, bug style, hit the Eidolon clone! Hit him hard! And then Miss Militia rocket launchers, and everybody else is going hog wild. They're just shooting the shit out of Eidolon. And he hasn't just been caught with like one clock blocker cord around the neck. It's like around his hands and his arms and his legs. So he's trying to squiggle his way out with his flickering squiggle power. And it is not fast enough. They get him. And then Skitter yells for her compatriots, the heroes, to watch for which side has the core. They can win this! Wanton and Weld are slooping in to save more people. Wanton's like he can be in there damaging the exterior of Noelle, and Weld is trying to scoop people up. A bunch of people were in the half that split off from the other half, so they're just like unclonable, and they can get grabbed up by the heroes. And Scapegoat is healing Clockblocker, so he won't die anymore, as I totally spoiled earlier. A containment van shows up, and Skitter thinks to herself, and I think this might even be true, but she's like, hopefully Tattletale will be in there, and Fault Line's crew. It was a bit odd, and I think they are possibly in that van, but I forget, because I kept focusing on this chapter, which was why I felt especially not ready to write up the other chapter, which was much longer. It has, like, distinct feeling sections to it. This is kind of like ebbs and boop, 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 boop. So the containment van also has a Chevalier on the turret. He's still just up there, driving back, ready to fight. They must have, like... The thing is, he probably has some, like, incredibly convoluted padding system inside the armor as another component on top of the, like, strength of the outside armor. So, probably he can withstand getting flung around and stuff, because they kind of expect that kind of thing to happen when you're a brute-style cape, is that someone might just hit you with another brute and fling you into a wall. On the bad side of things, at the end of the chapter, though, the Case 53s are standing apart from the rest now. And the people don't know who to trust on the hero side after all that. I could only hope this divide wouldn't prove as telling as the one I delivered Noelle. Pithy, Taylor! So yeah, we get to the end of that chapter, and then let's see here. Final chapter thoughts. I mean, I like the fights from the previous chapters, but this one is like crazy. And this is one of those chapters that, like, I think all the Chevalier fanboys and fangirls and fan thems, the various stands all perhaps dip their toe into the Chevalier waters here. I think this would be a common onboarding point because he really just like single-handedly does a ridiculous amount of damage to Noelle. And Rhyme, who also seems quite powerful, is like his number one subordinate as far as we know. Which I think is like continued to be confirmed in later chapters. So you know, it's like back-to-back badasses. You got like a super unkillable knight on the ground, like swinging his sword at people, and then like an ice wizard in the sky, like flinging things down at them. And prior to Mirrodin getting killed in this fight, rip Mirrodin, you know, he also had a different wizard who would fly and shoot like energy beams out of portals. It's pretty lit. And this is after we had the whole talk about Chevalier and Mirrodin fighting as a good team. At least I think that's true. Let's see. Mirrodin. Wow, almost nobody talked about... One person mentioned Eidolon in all the comments. Or, I mean, Mirrodin in all the comments, even though Mirrodin was killed in this chapter. Sad. So, sorry, I was just roving my eyes over some of the chapter text. I guess final chapter thoughts. This is one of the greatest fights. It's real good, and then we get one of those like, we know this information, but the reveal to the characters style moments. The revelation that Ignis gives of all the info. And it feels like a really, like, this has like some all is lost feeling moments. But then the tide is pretty turned. After they kill Ignis, it's clearly on the upswing for them. Anyway, arc stuff. You know, this is getting around to the final Taylor chapter, next chapter. But you know, whether or not you'd know this as a reader going into it, it's quite a long chapter, and a lot is still there to wrap up. That's why we don't really have a denouement chapter, because it's just held within the final climax chapter as well. As far as characters, there's some like more Clockblocker Skitter interactions that I think are important. Clockblocker is gonna have a good conversation with Skitter next chapter, and they have like this arc-long back and forth going on and stuff, you know, since they met at the 19.1 chapter. No, not 19.1. It's a 2 arc-long thing. When they met up in the end of 18.1, when they're like, Vista was kidnapped, and we think it was you. And then all the Undersiders are like, we're going to the headquarters with you, because it wasn't even us. So, you know, they've had this extended back and forth between the van ride and the conference room, and now this, and then the next chapter. So that's the biggest character interaction. Then we get some sort of varied reactions and Skitter's internal monologue about how she thinks people feel about the cauldron reveals from the heroes. So that's some interesting Gully and Weld content, like technically also sanguine and stuff, but we don't really know that character. We know Gully, even if we've only met Gully briefly, and we know Weld, clearly. And then oh yeah, I wrote here clearly in some sort of stupor. I wrote, when Ignis Fatuus uses evil wind powers, is it just him trying to besmirch John Egbert's name? So, you know, that's where my head is at when I write these things. For powers knowledge and world building, I just pulled some longer quotes here about different things that happened, but right at the beginning of the chapter. He touched Alexandria, and this is the Apocrypha, not actual Alexandria. He touched Alexandria, and she flickered. When the flickering died out, she was dressed in a costume, a long white cape, a white bodysuit with high boots and elbow-length gloves, and a stylized helmet that let her long black hair flow free. The tower on her chest was a tumbled ruin, the ruined lighthouse, a mockery of her other self, the colors reversed. So, you know, just some classic storytelling, imagery through costume, like basic mirroring of like, oh, they're evil clones, well, they'll have the reversed costume. There's also a naked Alexandria, but that is the Apocrypha, which is the second one, who shows up. You know, these things happen. Excuse me. And this other quote here. Echidna was liable to win any case of hand-to-hand combat that wasn't against a full-on Endbringer. Maybe she could even come out ahead in close quarters fight against the likes of Leviathan or the Seamerg, if she was capable of absorbing them. I think, one, she wouldn't be capable of absorbing nor cloning them, not only because they're immune to powers, but also because they're... I want to say they're like inorganic life forms. They're not like typical biological carbon-based life forms like we're used to seeing in like real life. Like, not to say that I don't believe in the science fiction concept of inorganic life. This is almost the opposite direction of, like, to me, it's pretty clear based on Blastow's chapter that if you zoom enhance a million times, they're just a fractal of crystals, and it's crystals all the way down. You know what I mean? So, and I think that's like that part of their nature is the whole reason also that like the fact that they're a fractal of density that breaks conventional physics is why Armsmaster couldn't kill Leviathan with Nanothorn. So yes, despite Skitter's thinking, I don't think that is a realistic worry that that would happen. I also think that the Seamerg would... I think both Leviathan and the Seamerg have enough tricks up their sleeve that Echidna in concert with other capes would be quite good, but Echidna alone against either one of them would be a complete failure. Like the Seamerg can use her telekinesis to just sort of sloop her way out of any physical blow, practically. Even when she's fighting Scion, then like she's still blocking or dodging most of his like ridiculous tier attacks. And then Leviathan itself could just exert pressure with the water echo, I feel like, and could just lash the tail like crazy. I think that Noelle would be done for against Leviathan, honestly, because Leviathan's just so strong. I do think that she'd put up a good fight and she could last for like, I don't know, maybe even several straight minutes. So if she had backup, like other capes attacking Leviathan, who knows what they could do. Like, I think they could put up a really strong fight against him. I know. But 1v1, I don't think that Echidna can stand up to the real deal. She's just not made of crystals. She ain't got that dog in her. Leviathan's got that dog in him. Anyway. There was a girl who was emanating red lightning that wasn't harming the allies she struck, apparently accelerating them to a faster speed instead. I had seen her somewhere, but had no idea who she was. A boy was fading in and out of reality, grabbing capes and then disappearing with his rescuee in tow. He'd reappear a moment later, a few paces away, before fading out of existence. He wasn't teleporting. He merely wasn't here when he was walking, some of the time. And I pulled that out because I think both of those powers are just like, they're like blink and you'll miss them. I think they mention each of those capes one other time, and I just think they have really cool sounding powers. I'd read a short story or even a main story featuring these types of characters, you know. These would be powers that I'd like to view. But that is the power of Worm, is that there's a lot beyond our field of vision. Oh, Vale says, still working, then dinner. Can't be on too much today. We'll catch up later. That's okay, Vale. I'm kind of wrapping up. I'm getting to the last parts of the powers, knowledge, and world building, and then I'm going to do the audience participation and be out pretty soon. And I don't normally like to talk about like stream schedule as much during the stream, because it's not that this is the most evergreen content anyway, but it's a little more so because I don't talk about like what day of the year it is usually or stuff like that. I'm not super concerned about current events or whatever. I mean, I am in real life, but not during the stream. I've been having a hard time keeping track on the stream, like doing the Saturdays, just because my life's been really busy. But I think this week I'm going to stream 19.7 during the week, and then Saturday, May 25th, then I should be able to be back on track. That's right, I set an actual date. It's like you could look at the timestamp when this was released. Anyway, for people listening this far, I'm sure you're fine hearing this garbage. It's amazing that anyone listens after the fact and isn't in the stream itself. So thank you very much for any listeners like that who follow along afterward. Anyway, the last bit that I wanted to pull out from the text for the powers knowledge that I thought was cool is the spider silk was, generally speaking, about 2 to 3 times as thick as the thinnest part of a safety razor. That was still pretty thin, especially when Clockblocker's power rendered it immobile, utterly unyielding, even as a monster with 3 times the mass of an African elephant crashed into it. She tried to pull to a stop as she made contact with the thread, but her momentum carried her all the way through. The bracing of her foremost limbs against the ground only helped to force the separation of the two halves. You know, I just thought that part was really cool. Sometimes, I just think it's cool when the superheroes fight. And I'm okay with that. So yeah, a lot of cool stuff. And then, okay. So, in the audience participation, the question for this chapter, which may extend to be just tell me more things, because I got sort of a smaller reception to the question than I had hoped. But we have time for a redux when I do 19.7. Phil says no time. Yeah, no worries. We have time now because of the chapter split that I've done here for the 2 streams. So in these chapters, we see a lot of combo attacks, including one of the most infamous Skitter combos in the entire work. What is a combo you want to see happen? And again, when I wrote this question, I did not know that we would see the beautiful artwork here. I really do think it's like amazing. Noelle's so hard to portray because there's so many different descriptions, and it's not that they're contradictory, it's just that there's so many different things happening at once. Anyway, though, the answers I got were 2 + 4 × 5 going back to a previous era and saying about the Bone Sea answer, which is one of the things that is most lodged in my brain, Bone Sea, which I try desperately not to say every time Bonesaw comes up, or anytime any of the 9 come up. I've been fully infected by the name Bone Sea. The memes are real. So, in response to the previous question, we get, how the fuck did I overlook Jack Smash as the name for a blunt force version of Jack Slash? Like a blunt force clone. And it's like, man, yet again, just another all-timer. 2 + 4 × 5 just waiting in the wings to hit me with these. Vale says, as an answer to this week's question, the Silkweave Strike, Firebug Assault. Skitter had so many good ones when she tried to be funny. And yes, these could make for good combos. I think the Silkweave Strike could either be this combo that she does with Clock Blocker, or it could be the combo. I mean, this would probably want like Unbreakable Silk Tripwire. Like that's the kind of name I might give it if it were an anime. Silkweave Strike might be like she combos up with Flechette from the hero side, and then uses Flechette's like infinite destruction applied striker power onto Silk that is then like launched by bugs in some way at the enemy. By the way, someone who is not at this fight, who, oh boy, they could have used it this fight, was Flechette. Like, she's in New York, I think, during this, but she doesn't show up for this fight. It's like, oh man, we could have really used you here, Flechette. Anyway, and then Firebug Assault, aside from being the name of that time that she had the bugs hold up matches like they were torches and they were a little mob of villagers. Aside from that, Firebug Assault would be Oh man, her bugs get coated in that ash that Scenario leaves behind to like cart the ash toward her enemies, and then once they have like gotten enough of the ashes into the area, then Scenario lights her body on fire, as she is wont to do, and all of the ash then lights up and they become the firebugs. This would most definitely kill all the bugs instantly because Scenario burns hotter than traditional fire, but you know, sometimes you gotta do a Firebug Assault. And this is why we're glad that Skitter controls bugs and not cute things like kittens, because it's pretty unconscionable to put a bunch of those cute kittens in the way of harm, even if it is in some way nominally similar to her expending bugs. As cute as a bug might be, we just don't have the same connection to them as to other mammals. Anyway, that was me going super off topic to avoid noticing that I didn't come up with any cool combo attacks either. So we will just reuse this question for the 19.7 stream, which will be soon. And I'm going to start up the outro music because, you know what? I'm just rambling and rambling. Oh man, I had it on the final frame of the video the whole time instead of moving over to the... Oh boy. Well, I'll put the thumbnail as the better quality one. And if anyone listens to the end, then they'll know that this is the full quality one right here. Let's start up that music. Thanks again to the people who were here. I know it was a bit of an odd timing, so not a lot of possibility for chat interaction, but we do what we must because we can. So this was using the music again, Queen Scourge by ScarlettXOX, who can be found at twitch.tv/Scarlett_Rogue. Every other week on Sunday, Scarlett plays a tabletop RPG as a solo player with a DM in a setting called The Muddle, which is like a place in space. It's like a ice ball planet. But anyway, it's a sci-fi detective story. And that's every other week on Sunday. Gas Station Blues. Our Discord server link can be found in the description of the channel and the stream. The author of the work being discussed can be supported on Patreon at patreon.com/wildbow. The full text of the work is available for free online at parahumans.wordpress.com, and there is also a fan-made audiobook of the entire work at audioworm.rain-online.org. And yeah, see you guys soon.